I'm here with Katarína Poliačiková and Nick Kline, and we started like in different ways collaborating many years ago. So both Katarína and Nick showed at open source individually, like different shows. Nick and I curated a show at ICP. When was that, Nick? In 2000?
Oh, 2000, maybe 12.
Right.
I think.
And then Nick and Katarína did something in Europe, right?
Newark, yeah.
Well, where should we start? Let's start with your collaboration. What did you actually do in Europe? I know very little about that.
So maybe I should start, Katarína. It's actually very funny because the other day, Katarína texted me and said she had a dream. She had a dream about me. And what was I doing in the dream again?
You moved to St. Mark's Place.
Right. And then I texted you back and said I don't remember what the coincidence was. Do you remember?
About your cactus.
Oh yeah, you had showed me a photograph. Yeah, you sent me a photograph of a cactus and you had been thinking about me and I said, oh, I have that same cactus. And anyway, our show in Prague had to do with coincidences that we have both shared. So we had, it turns out over the course of many conversations, which started with, meeting Katarína at your gallery, Monika, and seeing her show. I think I loved the show so much that I ended up writing a review about it for Brooklyn Rail. And then we got to know each other and we kept in touch, over the years. When Katarína would come back over, we would see each other and the conversations kept on going around art and photography and artist books too. So we decided to make an exhibition. I was in Prague for a few months on a sabbatical from school, and Katarína knew a gallery that we could approach there. What was the name of the gallery again?
Berlin Model.
Right, they're still going, I think, right? Berlin Model. I see. They're a fantastic artist-run gallery. Anyway, so we decided to kind of make an interactive type of exhibition around our shared coincidences as well as coincidences that each of us had in our own lives. And these were multiples that people attending the gallery could take and assemble into a kind of artist book that were made on a risograph press using a local press there in Prague. But yeah, do you recall some of the coincidences, Katarína?
Yeah, I think I do some, but I just remember the atmosphere at the opening. It was very special because it was this kind of interactive show, but it didn't have to be forced. People were curious to see what was in the boxes, what were the stories, and then they were just standing there and reading our coincidences and engaging with us, also sharing their coincidences, and it was a very lovely evening. And it was very pleasant collaboration, this one.
It's true. I remember actually that night of the opening, there was a really big coincidence because there was somebody there that night who was from New York, who
that's right.
It was just a very strange, it was strange, but it was also very memorable because you made a beet soup for everybody. You served soup at the opening. Back to another open source connection. And it was like a curry beet soup.
Monika knows I love to cook.
One of a very big memory I have, because Katarína ended up staying at my house quite a bit, and she was one of the greatest roommates I've ever had. and also
Oh.
a really, really good cook. Yeah, I got a lot of good.
Oh. I stayed at Katarína's apartment in Bratislava, and she was baking a lot. We would go to the local markets, and I could see her hunting for the best produce and vegetables and pies, and yeah.
So Katarína, like I would like to talk a little bit also about, because Nick was also mentioning your show at Open Source. That was really an amazing show, and that was actually not really so much based on coincidence. That was very tell us a little bit about that project.
Oh, where should I begin? It was a very personal project. I think the most personal I've ever done, and it was revolving around my story with my sister, with my half sister, and like I won't tell the whole of her life story because it's very long and very like soap opera. But the thing was that we only got to know each other when we were adults. This was 10 years ago, and then it was very strange because you meet someone who is your sibling or half sibling, and then you realize you don't have any common memories. So there is no bond. You only know that you share your blood, but you don't have anything to build on. And you realize you have to, if you need to sustain this relationship, you need to create some memories. And 2 years after we met for the first time, I had this idea that, when you look at the sun and somebody else on the earth look at the sun, you're looking at the same thing, and there's this connection in space and time, even if you are not close. And I thought that maybe, because my sister, she lives in London and I'm in Slovakia, and I thought maybe we can do this year-long project when we will be taking photographs of the sun at the same moment every day. And in this way, we will be building a diary of our shared moments, like building a body of memory that did not exist before.
Mm.
And she was very happy to do that with me. She thought this idea was a little bit crazy, but then she said, yeah, let's do that. And it was a very beautiful process.
All right.
Like keeping this person so close every day, because every day you have this moment together. Right. That you both like point your camera or phone to the sun, and it happens, like there is this connection.
And in the game, it was also so cool because there was a projector on each side, and in the middle it met, but you could never see both photos at the same time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then I'm thinking, and then I got invited to make a show at the Open Source based on this project, and I was thinking, how can I do that in the gallery? Because I already did a book with all the photographs. Book in 2 parts that you are only able to see. You're like able to see my part and my sister's part, but never the 2 images from the same day together. And what I was thinking, how can I install the exhibition so there is not only like the book in the middle of the space. I thought that the show could be changing in time.
Right.
So we built this projection screen in the middle of the space, and then on each side you would have an image projected from a particular day. And this show was in November, beginning of December, I think. And I chose images corresponding to the days from the year before.
Right.
So on 10th of December, you would have the image from the same day 1 year ago. And so the exhibition was changing every day. There was something new to see. And yeah. this is what it was.
Yeah, that was really awesome. I did like that show very much, and I actually just have this is one of my favorite books from Katarína. This is so beautiful. It's probably really hard to see on the screen because it's a little bit more nuanced. You have to see it in person, but it actually has a lot of her work integrated in basically many stories. But this one is, I guess, one of the photos, right?
Yeah, it's there. This is a special moment we decided to make with the graphic designer who designed the book, like putting this book inside of this new book.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful. And then, as I said, and so then it happened that Nick saw the show. Nick wrote a review. Nick, did you have your show before? So
Yeah.
you had
Yeah.
a Katarína show, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And your show was also great. Actually, now we want to hear about your show.
Actually, you know, yeah, come to think of it, I really didn't, I was really motivated to write about Katarína's show after seeing the installation. I don't write very often unless I really want to, and you know, and I really believed in, and still do, of course, open source. So I felt like this was an important show and an important space, and that's what motivated me to do it. I've written a handful of exhibition reviews or done interviews with artists, and you know, I was really taken with how photography, Katarína particularly used photography as a way to connect, and both the struggle to connect, to find shared memories or to establish them, and how photography became that medium to do it with. And I think it connected a lot with my own show, which was about at open source, which had to do with touch and photography, you know, touch and sight, and trying to use the medium in some way to get closer, you know, to break down. You know, I think often the camera can become a barrier between our own personal experiences and living or feeling. And so my goal with the body of work that I've been doing and showed at open source was a way of trying to get closer, you know, and to try to find, you know, yeah, a sense of touch and connection. So anyway, I guess I shared with Katarína and still do some kind of skeptical relationship with photography in some way, or you know, an uncomfortable place with it. Yeah. So yeah, at the time I'd been the show that I had at open source was called Gilgo Beach, and Gilgo Beach, you know, the main subject of the photographs were photographs of rubber silicone castings that I had done at a site on Long Island, doing impressions of the landscape out on by Jones Beach. And the way that I'd been making these castings is by mixing together a rubber silicone compound, and while it was still wet, you know, pressing it into the earth to make an impression, and then those rubber objects would dry pretty quickly. So for me, you know, going to a site and touching it and making an impression and then photographing it later was a way of connecting more deeply to a place or to a memory or to an experience. And often I would go to these, working on that project, I would go to sites with people, with friends, and you know, be having a shared fun experience of mixing this rubber up. And so everything was kind of, you know, a way of preserving a moment more deeply in this rubber casting, and in the details, the textures, trying to capture something that was more direct than a photograph could do. you know, where I'd be hiding behind the camera. I wanted to get closer. So
it was
anyway.
an investigation also, because the work itself was so beautiful, but the text then, you know, kind of put you in a different place. And I feel like that's, you know, but that's I think was also so cool about why I thought it was great to have you both at the same time. But you both really focus on books right now, right? More on, or maybe not any, but
Yeah.
you did focus, are very interested in it. All right. And maybe Nick, with your story, what you're doing now, that's something that we should maybe also quickly touch upon. But first, the books, I think, are really a beautiful text and imagery is something super interesting, and the way you deal with it, I thought, was always really cool. And yeah, I Katarína sends us a newsletter every week that I look forward to every time. Those are stories that that really take you somewhere else, especially in this pandemic. It was really good. I'm like, oh, great. I'm not here at this table. I'm now going to Portugal. Or
yeah, usually sitting in a cafe, right?
In Slovakia. But Katarína, you wanna tell us what you're doing and what your stories are, what is happening with your books and.
Yes, so yeah, I'd like to say something about the newsletter that is almost 1 year old.
Wow.
Will be 1 year old in December. And yeah, and about writing. I think I started writing in 2011, something like that, in English. Slovak is my first language, but English is my writing language. And then I think in 2016 I established this platform called Actuation. Actuation is a word I made up from eggs and intuition. So it's like using intuition when you boil your eggs, so they are just perfect without measuring the time. Oh. And on this blog, I started publishing my short stories, short essays, and some musings about my personal experience, about time, and so on. Also with photograph. So there will be photographs and text. And then last year, a friend of mine, she sent me a newsletter from a woman, I forgot the name of the writer, who it was published through this platform called Tiny Letter. And I liked the form, it was very intimate. And she said something like, oh, I would like to read something like this from you from time to time in the form of a newsletter. And I think I had already been thinking about this before, but never got the push to do it. So I think this was the moment when I decided, yeah, this might be something that could be interesting for me. Mm. And luckily, I didn't imagine all the work in front of me, like sending a text every week. But I just started. I think this is just the best way how to begin things. I sent the first letter, and it was this commitment to send a text every single Sunday, and then people were looking forward to read it. So it was also very motivating. I got very, very good feedback, so I just kept going.
I think, yeah, I like your writing, but I really definitely like the way you actually put it together in a book. Like, it's just so visually appealing, and I don't know, you tell the stories already with the pictures, and even the newsletter, the pictures you choose, I think, are so great. So there's definitely this great combination between, it's hard to show this on camera, but let's, for example, this, how do I do this? This way, yeah. Like little, picture book.
It's like a book.
There's so great nuances in one book, and such great stories that you tell with words and images. I think that's really fascinating.
I think I also have to mention that I was very lucky to collaborate with very good graphic designer who she's a woman, Aurelia, and she has this sensitivity and she understands my work and she feels it. So it was very important to work with her to achieve this outcome.
You know, it's true. I think that Katarína's images are so poetic, and there's a nostalgia to them for me. Often we see these photographs, these types of moments in silence, you know, and I love the way that there's text that, like you said, Monika, that comes with it. And I think something that's really unique about Katarína's practice with these images and text is the need to create community and you know, people look forward to this every week, a little escape. They don't just exist in a high art vacuum, you know, that we would experience in the silence of a gallery. It's more about reconnecting these moments of seeing a moment of somebody sitting in a cafe, you know, or a vegetable or a fruit bathed in sunlight. These are the kinds of memories I have of some of the images that have accompanied your text, Katarína. But you know, yeah, I think it's it brings a lot of hope. And I guess, you know, I didn't want to turn this into me, but in terms of my practice now, you know, as an artist, I've also found a lot of satisfaction in, like yourself, Monika, in, you know, in providing space for others. And so my own hand as an artist for the last number of years has been less important when you see the work up front than the work I'm doing behind the scenes to provide a platform for other people. So the main project I've been working on is called Shine Portrait Studio, and it's located in downtown Newark, New Jersey. And it's a socially engaged artwork that I've been privileged to be able to realize with the support of Rutgers University, where I teach. And they've provided a space and resources in a former department store in downtown Newark, so I can create a space that reimagines what a portrait photography studio is for our time now. So these portrait studios used to be so common in our villages and towns, you know, and it used to be a place where the community would go and there would be a visualization of that community. In a city such as Newark, New Jersey, like many others, you know, these have all but disappeared. And, you know, where are the stories that community tells about itself is, you know, is one of the questions that I'm really interested in. And so my time now as an artist is mostly taken up by working with other artists and people in the Newark, New Jersey and greater communities who are working on projects in this portrait studio. So, and as part of that, I am publishing artist books and photo books. I'm wearing more of the hat as an editor than I am, you know, my own hand as an artist featuring my own work. But yeah, so that's, you know, where I see a connection with the practice that Katarína is doing, and certainly yours as well, Monika. I think, you know, this kind of notion of also that Katarína's arrives on, I think, Sunday mornings. Is that right, Katarína, your newsletter?
Yeah.
And, you know, and then I think of Church of Monika. And, you know, when you walk into Shine, the first thing that you see, one of the first things that you see is a rack full of cloths from a fabric store, and people can wrap themselves, and they do. They use them as props, and they're kind of a ritualistic prompt, if you will. So it's a kind of sacred space feeling that when you walk in, it's full of light and it's an uplifting space. So I'd say that, thinking about each of your own art practices, it's something that I share as well with you.
And honestly, Nick, we should really, I should invite you for a Church of Monika.
I agree.
So that we can talk a little bit more about socially engaged spaces.
I'd love to.
Yeah. Right?
I'd love to.
I think that because that is something that I'm very interested in. I think it is something that we have to focus on a lot more again, because there is not going to be the funding for it as there used to be years before. So we have to really find solutions on how to provide space for artists and communities. So I totally agree. And so just in the end, because I know I want to say that both Nick and Katarína gave pieces to our fundraiser, and that was great. And Nick, you want to just really quickly in a couple of sentences say what yours is about?
Yeah, I think that as I was just talking about with the spirit of my work, church is a theme that runs throughout it. And, this is a photograph that I made at a special event that I was invited to photograph at St. Patrick's Cathedral. It was called the Hard Hat Mass, and it was a mass organized by a Franciscan monk. He does it every year to honor the lives of construction workers who died while on the job, in the previous year. So I've been working on a series of photographs personally inside confession booths. In Catholic churches, there's these spaces that you go into a closet or behind a curtain and you have a screen in front of you. And I've been photographing those screens in different churches. And I met a priest in a church here in New York City, and we hit it off, and he keeps on emailing me ideas for projects. Mm-hmm. So I'm just kind of going with the flow. And he said, "Oh, come to the Hard Hat Mass," and I went there. So there was a moment where all these people were just going into the door, mm-hmm. and it felt like, this great bridge, this great metaphor in some way of, going from one space to another.
Right.
So anyway, that's a little bit about that piece.
Well, thank you. And then Katarína has one also in there that that I remember from a book one artist book she made also here. Can you tell us just a couple of words about that one?
It's a photograph from 2017. It's a self-portrait actually, which I made in Lithuania, in a special place where I did my art residency that summer. And it's a semi-island. Is that what you say? Semi-island is like connected to the land once. And it's basically a sand dune that emerged from the sea 5,000 years ago. And there are little villages, like fish villages, and also Nida, the place where the residency is located. And what's the landscape is so magical, and the most magical about the landscape are the sand dunes. It looks almost like a desert, and I've never been to any desert, and for me it was a very fascinating place. And then I got a special permission to visit a particular location, which is normally closed for people because it's protected area, like a nature reservation. and I got to walk on the surface of the sand, like barefoot, and then I made a self-portrait to remember this special moment. And it goes along with the text I wrote when I was in New York with open source. It's called Desert, a letter to Georgia Oki. And in this text, I'm writing a letter to Georgia about the landscape